Welcome to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast, where we break down the complex and emotional process of divorce into manageable, easy to understand steps. I'm your host, Greer Howard, and with me is Bobby Buchanan, widely recognized as one of Illinois' top divorce attorneys, offering unmatched insight and experience in family law. Well, Bobby, we are back today. It is great to see you for another episode. And today we've got a good one. We are going to be talking about finding the hidden assets when it comes to divorce. And we know that when you're going through a divorce, it can be so emotional, and the financial side is a big piece of it. And it's really crucial to understand the full financial picture. So why don't we kind of start out today, Bobby, with you just sort of defining what is a hidden asset?
Yeah, there's not a good to see you, by the way, Greer. I'm happy to be back and to talk about this one. There's not a legal definition of a hidden asset. A hidden asset isn't like this legal thing where if we find it, then XYZ automatically happens. But what it really is and what we're talking about is when somebody is trying to hide something from the court, not allow them to see everything that they have, with the ultimate goal that they get more. That we settle this case thinking that there's $100,000 of marital assets to split. Both sides get 50-50. And then once it's all said and done, one of the spouses is leaving and they actually have a $500,000 somewhere else. And that could either be in a bank account, that could be the value of a business, that could be cash underneath a mattress. All sorts of different things can happen here.
Yeah, so obviously it's really important to understand this full picture. And also, like, there's some consequences, right? If you don't understand that picture, like you're saying, you're not getting your full financial benefit.
Yeah, if you don't understand that you have the opportunity to look into this and when you have to look into it, then you might actually miss the boat, because there's a small window when you can dive into this, investigate it, do what's called discovery to get more information. And if you don't do it at the right time, then you are SOL and you can't reopen your case that easily down the road. So we want to make sure that we get this right the first time.
Okay, so that does make it sound serious. And since we are talking about Illinois, is there anything that's important to know about Illinois in particular about hidden assets?
Well, we have to remember Illinois is an equitable distribution state, which means that we need to know what is the total of the marital estate, the marital assets, in order to divide them equitably, which means fairly. So if we don't know the whole picture, then we can't divide the whole basket, if you will. And you know, as I was preparing for this episode, I was thinking a lot about money and our relationship to money and our relationship to money with our spouse. And I think it's different for every single couple. We're filming this on tax day. Actually, it's April 15th. People are probably going to see this a few weeks or a couple months down the road. But today, like many couples, many people, my wife and I, as we drank our coffee this morning, signed our tax return to get it filed. And I don't think that we're a lot different in the sense that it's my job to prepare the taxes, or I hire somebody to help do it. But I'm much more intimately familiar with the numbers for the business, the financials of my household. And my wife, she'll review, like, it's kind of a one pager that she gets, and then she signs it, but she doesn't see everything underneath it. If she asks for it, would I have a problem with her seeing it? No. Like, we're an open book as far as finances in our marriage, but not everybody is the same, and everybody treats finances differently. So I know that some couples do, this is my money and this is your money. We don't even, maybe they have a joint bank account, maybe they don't. So a lot can be discovered during the divorce process that people didn't know before, because it really does have to be, or can be, all put on the table at that time.
Yeah, so I think you have to kind of take a realistic view into
Who are you married to? And what is that conversation looking like about, your finances? And, have you, when at during the marriage, were you really transparent about those things, or did you sort of know that maybe there were some things going on that, you weren't really privy to? And, I think you kind of have to weigh too the emotional side of it, because there is this like emotional side to finance that you mentioned. And then also there's this like legal duty. There's a legal side of it, of like what's fair. And so, helping people sort of navigate those two things, I'm imagining, is pretty important during this process as well.
Yeah, and figuring it out, like you said, it's emotion. Like money is so emotional in general. Money is like I am one of those people that believes that money is very like aligns itself very closely to energy. And not to get all like what's the word, like foo-foo about it or whatever, but
Woo
uh
woo.
yeah, exactly. Um but it does matter. The kind of mindset that you have, the kind of emotion that you have around money will control a lot of, whether it's easy come, easy go, how much, like whether it comes into your life easily, whether or not you struggle with it, and also it can become very emotional around, splitting it, and that's where certain people get very possessive with their money and they get very concerned about splitting it during a divorce, and they might have a tendency to then try to hide it. So it doesn't happen, in most divorces, it can be a very transparent process, and it should be. And as I always talk about, the best divorces are the ones where we can just put everything on the table, that we can um, either resolve this at our own dinner table without getting lawyers involved, or maybe if we get lawyers involved, it's in the context of mediation or collaboration, and we don't have to go to court to litigate this. But I think this is one of the exceptions where you really do have to litigate it if you're concerned about there being hidden assets. At a certain point, there's no way to collaborate if one person is hiding something.
Right. So let's get into it as far as what this actually looks like in a real divorce, because it can sound really dramatic, but it doesn't have to be, right? I mean, I think you're always really good about that. And so why don't we just kind of start with maybe breaking down what counts, like what is a hidden asset? What are some of those things that you might want to be looking for?
Yeah, so the most common areas that we see people hiding assets is if they have a very cash heavy business. So restaurant owners, salon owners, maybe a landscaping company, something like that, where it's very easy to get paid in cash, and you can then funnel that cash somewhere else. So if your spouse does own one of those businesses, it's possible that they've been putting that cash somewhere in some account that you don't even know about. And a lot of times, them hiding assets is parallel with them hiding assets from the IRS as well. So they're kind of working the angle so that nobody knows about this money and they have a stash of it. I would be very like red or at least orange flags should go up if you're living a very lavish lifestyle, or you seem to get a certain level of gifts or cars or vacations in your marriage, but then at tax time the IRS thinks that you don't make any money. Like that, it doesn't go hand in hand. It's not like those are, people think like, oh, those are write-offs, maybe we're writing it off for the business. Well, I have a kind of a surprise for you, but you can't write that sort of stuff off. So you're setting yourself for possible IRS audit, penalties, even worse. I think we've all seen these things in social media, in celebrities getting hit with these sorts of things when they're trying to hide assets. It happens to my clients as well, the clients on the opposing party, in cases that we have. Like, people do this in real time, so that's why I thought this is such an important episode.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that today is tax day, and you're kind of alluding to that there, that could be, if you're dealing with the IRS, you're not actually reporting, what you're really bringing in, and you're signing it. That's the other thing is like, if you are signing it, like that kind of, you
Yeah,
need to kind of
you're on
understand what's
the
going
hook.
on.
You're on the
Yeah.
hook. Um, eh, yeah, I mean, it happens. I'm trying to think right now. It's one of the housewives, went to
Oh,
jail.
yeah, and from New
Uh,
Jersey. I can't think of her name either, but I can see them, and yeah,
Teresa. Don't ask me
Teresa.
why I know that. Um
I'm gonna say your wife.
Um, so she went to prison, I believe, because basically she was just signing off on these documents that her husband told her to sign off on. And he went to prison for a longer time, but she did as well because she she was like, "Okay, I'll sign this." And I think it was wire fraud or mortgage fraud or something like that. And it's heavy. So you do have to be really, if you're living a lifestyle that seems grander, like doesn't really add up, then we might have to investigate a little bit further, and we might find out some shocking things during your divorce process.
Yeah, yeah. And what about like retirement investment accounts? I mean, because sometimes you're doing that separately. You may not really even know what's in your spouse's retirement account.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, retirement accounts, investment accounts, uh, the the investment accounts could be coming from an entirely different income source that you don't know about. So, like at the
Mm.
beginning of a case, let's talk about kind of how this starts and how people start to get a feel, or lawyers start to get a feel for there being an issue. And
So,
that,
what about, could we give a hypothetical situation?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Okay. So I've got one. Let's say that a husband works as an independent contractor and he gets paid in cash for some of his projects. And his wife gets suspicious because, and you sort of alluded to this, because they have this lifestyle where, wait, their kids go to private school, they go on vacations, they have a luxury car, and it doesn't really align with the tax return that they seem to be, reporting every year, what's on their taxes. So, is that kind of one of those situations where you're going like, "Oop, red flag."
Yeah, absolutely. And the time that this comes up where we really start to see, hey, there's probably an issue here, is during the financial affidavit stage of a case. So, kind of divorce 101 here. At the beginning of a litigated case, there's a mandatory exchange of financial affidavits. And that's where both sides have to lay out their current income, a detailed list of their current expenses, all of their bank accounts, pretty much all of their assets, all of their debts. And what will happen is someone who's not playing by the rules, if you will, someone who's hiding assets from the IRS or their spouse, they won't be able to present a financial affidavit that looks legit. Like there'll be way more expenses on it than there is income. And they'll probably end up having to say, oh, they're in the red a few $1,000s a month. And it's like, well, how does that make sense? You're saying you don't have
Mhm.
any debt, but you're also saying that your expenses largely outpace your income, and things don't start to add up at that point.
Yeah, that's not tracking, Bobby.
It's not tracking. So we gotta dive a little bit deeper, and that's where we gotta have a tough talk with our client and say, "This is obviously adding up. Do you have any idea of what's going on here?" And our client might say, "Well, I know that he gets paid cash for a lot of these jobs." Or I know that, his brother, the checks for these jobs are actually written in the name of his brother rather than him. Having family members getting paid on behalf, is one way that this happens. They're getting paid in cash. So at that point, we have to make a strategic decision with our client as to whether or not we're going down the rabbit hole. And that's a big decision to make because it can get really expensive to do that sort of investigation.
Yeah, I mean, and speaking of investigation, I feel like I get to be a detective now. Like, all of a sudden, like, it all changes, and now we're like, hold on. I think that going through a divorce, trying to figure out these hidden assets, everybody's becoming a detective. So, but there's a legal process, So instead of the your client being the detective, what are some of like the tools and the ways that you can actually uncover these hidden assets, maybe in an appropriate way?
Yeah. Well, you can get creative when you do this, but there is a toolbox that lawyers can use, and that's called the discovery tools. So once you have exchanged financial affidavits, that's the first step that you have to do in order to open up the toolbox. At that point, you can issue what's called interrogatories to the other side, and that's standard questions that tells the other side that they need to provide you detailed information about assets, debts, income, titles to property, operating agreements for businesses, all that sort of stuff. Anything really related to the financial picture, they have to answer all these questions. And then the next set of tools that you can use is request for production. And it's basically saying, give me all the documents that back up that information that you just gave us. Um, and these are pretty standard disclosures. And what you start to see during this discovery process is either people are really slow to get these documents together because they're scrambling, they're trying to figure out, how am I going to bob and weave around this and keep hiding these assets, or they turn over some bank statements. You start going through them as either the client, because once we get the bank statements, we're going to share those with our client, and our clients are very good at spotting things that maybe we can't see because they're more familiar with the kind of the personality or the behaviors of the other side, or they have a broader context than we do. And then we're really good at seeing kind of the common issues that you see when people are hiding assets. Like, you see a transfer of money from one bank account to another, and then you look at the financial affidavit and you say, wait a minute, you just transferred money into an account that you didn't disclose on the original financial affidavit.
Mm.
So
Big
then
no
you
no. The no
big
big chunks of money, right?
Yeah, big no-no. And so then you can either go to the other side and say, give me this other bank account, or if they're slow to be turning over all these documents, you can go directly to the bank and subpoena them. And so a subpoena, we've all heard that term before, but what that really is, it's a legal obligation for a third party to give you documentation. So as attorneys, we can sign our own subpoenas during a case and send them out to banks, to contractors, to credit card companies, whoever we want, and say, turn us over all the records related to XYZ person, or this person's social security number, or this specific bank account. And then they'll give us the documents, and they won't play games because they have, they're not trying to hide anything. They just say, okay, here's all the documents. So
Right. So if somebody, let's say the wife is suspecting that there's like another account, but the husband is like, no, no, but she can actually, he better tell the truth, because she can actually, if she even has a whiff that there might be an account at this bank, she's going to that bank and gonna get a subpoena and she'll find out.
yeah, absolutely. You'll send the subpoena, you'll find out. Now, again, like I said before, there has to be a discussion on, is this all worth it? Because, like we said before, money is emotion, and finding out about this, that someone's hiding something, can be very emotional and might make you angry. And you're like, well,
Mhm.
I want to make sure, I want to go after him for this and figure out what's going on. But is it worth it? Like, do we really think that there's gonna be 4, 5, six figures of, money that we're gonna find? Like, if there's just 4 figures of money, like, obviously, that's not nothing, but you're gonna spend 5 figures on attorney's fees doing
Mhm.
this exercise. So you gotta make sure, you gotta have a strong, strong feeling that you're gonna uncover something of significant value to make this
Right. It's like at $5,000, you maybe just need to let it go, but if you think it's $500,000, like, you go ahead and, like, push through. Like, we
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to just let go $5,000 because you're
Sure.
like, "Hey, that doesn't seem fair. They shouldn't be able to get away with this." But
But if you're gonna spend 2,500 on it, and then you gotta split that half, half and half, at what point are we,
yeah, and it's gonna be
splitting hairs here?
it's gonna be way more than 2,500. Like, you're gonna spend at least $10,000.
Oh, wait, if it was 5, now I'm out 5,000. I don't like that equation
Yeah,
at all.
exactly. And maybe yeah, so and there's even no sure thing that you're gonna be able to nail them, and even when you do find that like there are cases where you find the smoking gun, and it creates a massive amount of leverage in your negotiation and can swing things from you maybe getting $50,000 in the settlement to you now getting $150,000. Like that makes a lot of sense. But other times you still have to litigate and spend more and more money to get it to a place where a judge is actually looking at it. So really have those conversations with your attorney and be mindful that even though emotionally you might be angry and want to get, quote unquote justice, that's not going to feel great a couple years down the road when you're like 50K in debt from attorney's fees bills and you didn't get any further and your case is still going on because you're still fighting and like
Nightmare. Yeah,
yeah,
terrible.
nightmare fuel. Get over it, get
Yes,
through it.
yes. Okay, so are there any other asset tools that, like, the discovery tools about assets that we haven't covered that we should know about for today?
Yeah, so depositions, I think, is the other big one. That's where we can have your spouse or anybody else related to the case sit down to testify under oath. It's outside of court. It's in an attorney's office, but a court reporter is there. They have to swear to tell the truth. And that's where an attorney can get a lot more information and they can have all of these bank statements in front of them, all the financial documents that the other side's already turned over and go through them page by page and say, can you explain these transactions? Can you explain where did this money go? What is this bank account here that's listed? They can go through the financial affidavit line by line with the other side. So that can be really powerful in continuing the investigation. And then the last one, once we have all this information, is we can give it over to a financial expert, a forensic accountant who can dive in and make sense of all of it and maybe find some even more red flags and continue the investigation further and
Yeah,
eventually maybe even testify at a trial if they need to explain to a judge why all of these different pieces put together amount to a level of hiding or fraud or whatever the case may be to make your case that you should get a bigger proportion of the marital estate because of the actions of the other side.
sure. And Bobby, we were hoping to not make it dramatic, but look at us go. I mean, the drama is just building with this imaginary case we have in our mind here.
I know it can be pretty intense and you never know where it's going to go when you go down the rabbit hole, but like I said, it can be expensive, so people really have to make sure that they want to and it's worth it for them.
Yeah, definitely. So let's do another hypothetical. So let's say that a wife suspects that her husband is underreporting his income from a landscaping company and a company that potentially could have, a lot of cash flow. What would you suggest that she does?
So, if we get that sort of case, what we're going to do initially is the financial affidavit. We're going to look at it closely to see what is he reporting just on regular expenses. Does his income pale in comparison to his expenses? If we issue discovery and he doesn't willingly turn over documents, we'll then send out subpoenas. We'll send out subpoenas to the bank accounts related to the landscaping company. We could send out subpoenas to the contractors or the vendors related to the landscaping company and start to get that sort of information, deeper financial information. It can be, I don't want to paint a picture here that we can always find the truth and it's easy, or like as long as you go step by step and follow a certain roadmap, you're always going to find that smoking gun. Because the reality is, all cash businesses, or businesses that run with a lot of cash, are really hard to nail down and to create like this bulletproof case in court. So it can be very tough. So it really depends on how big is this landscaping company, and the bigger a company is, the harder it is to be an all cash company, or be working mostly in cash these days. It's a lot of people are paying with credit cards or Venmo or those sorts of things, and all of those can
You can
be
track.
subpoenaed, tracked, all of that. Um, so we really have to look at it. Like if someone is saying my husband's business is, all cash, he's not putting it into the bank account, I don't know where it is, we will have a discussion with our client about, well, how much cash do you really think this is?
Mhm.
And a lot of times people think that businesses are a lot more profitable than they are, where they're like, well, he's getting $20,000 a month in cash. Like he must be rich. Well, it's like, well, no, he's got like 5 people that are working for him.
Right, and then there's, like, expenses for your business, and there's probably money you're putting aside for taxes, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden that
No,
20
I would
grand, you're
go.
like, "Oh."
He's probably not doing the tax part, but no.
You're right, you're right. I was giving him the benefit of the doubt, you
No, he
know?
he could be, but I hear what you're saying. Like there are a lot of expenses, and so, a business that's doing $20,000 of cash per month might only equal really someone making $40,000 a year or something. Like you just never know exactly how profitable they are. So,
Well, let's talk a
yeah.
little bit about kind of just the importance of discovery, because I would imagine, some attorneys want to kind of skip through it, or they want to have a fast, resolution to the case, which of course I think,
Mhm.
you also want to, get the case wrapped up. Who wouldn't? But, there are, if you don't actually go through discovery, there's some repercussions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important point, and a really important discussion that we need to have with our client is, how much discovery are we going to do? Is it worth it? Because if we skip over it and we don't do it, and we just say, and our client just signs off on the settlement agreement, they can't go back to court later. A year later, they find out, oh, wait a minute, they were concealing the value of this business or these other assets or bank accounts. I want to go back in and I want to get my share of those. I want to reopen the case and relitigate the whole thing. 99 times out of 100, that's not going to be possible. The court's going to say, you had your chance to do discovery, you didn't do it, or you didn't do it as much as you should have. The ship has sailed, and you can't go back. So, like we said, you get kind of one shot at this. So, it's important that you do it at the right time.
Okay, so like let that sink in. If someone out there is, considering, should I do discovery, should I not, and you have some questions, if you're unsure if your spouse is being honest, this is your chance. After it's over, it's done. So I think that's a really good point to make. But let's say that we did go through, discovery, and your client, found some hidden assets. So then what happens?
So, if you do have some really strong proof that there is a hidden asset, maybe you maybe your husband or your wife has saying, the value of my business is not what you think it is, and it's 1/10 of what you think it is. And you say, I think that you're wrong. I think you're manipulating the books so that you don't have to split the value of this business. And we go through this whole process of discovery, getting financial documents. We give them over those documents over to a business valuation expert, and they write a report and they say, this business is extremely valuable. Then what you do is you take that report and you give it to the other attorney, and you say, let's talk settlement. Let's negotiate at this point, because if we go to trial, we're going to put that valuation expert on the stand, and they're going to testify to the value of this business. And we think the judge is going to agree with that expert and award us, X amount of dollars in value. So it creates a very powerful negotiation tool, creates leverage in the process. And if the other side doesn't want to negotiate, then you do have to prepare for trial and go to trial. And that's what judges are for.
I love this option though, Bobby. I mean, it's great to, kind of bring this up because even the discovery process that takes time, it takes money. And, you're sort of, if when you actually find something, I love that you've got that negotiating power at that point. And then also you don't have to go to trial. Like you could negotiate that and come to terms without having to extend it, which is great because the other side knows, hey, we have found this information. It's concrete. So I love that that's definitely, an option out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not necessarily going to have to go to a full blown trial just because you're going down this road. Hopefully, the evidence that you find um, is of the type that gives you that leverage. That it's not like kind of like wishy washy where you can't, it's like, this could be something, might be something, maybe not. It's got to be something really solid to give you that leverage.
Yeah. Okay, so any other considerations or
I think the one other thing that that we should talk about is this hypothetical where the husband, quote unquote, forgets to
Oh yeah.
disclose.
Yeah.
So
So, yes, so we have here that there's a husband who, just kind of forgot to disclose on the financial affidavit this investment account that he had with $150,000 in it. Uh, what oh, what happens here?
what happens here? So if you forget to disclose something, like, first of all, is it did you really forget? Did you forget? Did you? The husband's going to have an opportunity here to fix his financial affidavit. And so there are instances where people do make mistakes. They do leave something off. They're overwhelmed. They're stressed out. They forgot to add this investment account. If when it's brought to their attention, they quickly amend their financial affidavit and do a new one and give it to the other side, then they're probably going to be okay. It could be used against them at a trial. The other side could say, hey, are you really being truthful about all your financial situation? Do you even know what you have? Can we really believe you? Because look what you did. You turned over this financial affidavit and you missed this huge account and then you fixed it. Well, good for you for fixing it, but I'm not sure I can really trust you, and kind of plant that seed of doubt in the judge's mind. So that's one way it can affect you. The other way is if the husband doesn't amend their financial affidavit and they continue to say this account doesn't exist, and then 6-7 months into the litigation you bring it to the judge and say, judge, we've given them ample opportunity to disclose this and they haven't, it's possible the judge hits the husband with penalties for lying on their financial affidavit. So if there is a reckless misrepresentation on the financial affidavit, then the other side can be hit with penalties. They can be hit with attorney's fees for the other side because we now had to do more work in order to bring this to light. So they have to pay our attorney's fees. So there can definitely be some serious repercussions for lying on the financial affidavit.
Yeah. Okay, well, Bobby, we've covered a lot today. And I think another discussion we'll have to have down the road, this is discovering, hidden assets. There also could be hidden debts in this situation, which is not as much fun to
Yeah.
find out about, but we're not going to bring you down today. We'll talk about that another time. But any kind of like final tips or final thoughts on discovering those hidden assets when you're going through a divorce?
Just stay pragmatic. When we look at this, with you and your attorney, really try to have a discussion on, is it worth it to go down this road? Sometimes it really is, and it's clear that it is. And, someone has 5, 6, 7, 8 LLCs that, they've created shell companies, and it's going to be useful to peel back the onion and find those hidden assets so that you create leverage. Other times it's not. You might discover they've hidden $10,000, but you just spent $20,000 on attorney's fees to figure it out. That's not worth it. My recommendation is move on with your life. Spend that money on the therapy that you need to get over this person who was never transparent with you in the first place, so that you can be more of a whole person in your next, chapter, romantic chapter. That's my super pragmatic, optimistic advice.
Yeah, I love that. And for people that, don't like to rock the boat and all that, I think it's great to remember that, you're not going into this, hopefully for conflict, but you're really trying to think about your future, right? And you're trying to think about what was fair, and to kind of keep that mindset. And like you said, just kind of keep your emotions together, and then all of it will come out through this discovery process. And hopefully you can end up getting something that's fair and that you're happy with for your future.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Well, Bobby, thanks so much for all of your insight as always. And we'll look forward to another episode next week.
Thank you for listening to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast. We hope today's episode gave you clarity and support as you move forward on your journey. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Tune in next week for more insights and expert advice on the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast.